of the Lord rise among us. Let the glory of the Lord rise among us. And let the praise of the King rise among us. Let it rise. And let the songs of the Lord rise among us. Let the songs of the Lord rise among us. And let the joy of the King rise among us. Let it rise. 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 Let it rise.
All right, so setting up the Hyperlite mountain gear Unbound 2-person tent. This is my third time doing it now out here in the backyard. That's a big recommendation I have for you all, is to really put in the reps in a comfortable place like this, you know, your backyard, where you can make mistakes. I get out here when it's cold. I try to get out here when it's wet. I play around in the fire pit. I do different things here so that once it's time to get into the backcountry, I've got some reps behind me and I'm not trying to figure it out in the middle of nowhere, right? So third time setting it up, what I have discovered, it can be a little deceiving when you watch the video. You know, they say stake down all 4 corners and then just pitch up the 2 trekking poles, tighten down your guy lines and all that, and you're good to go, right? Well, what's kind of missed in that instruction is how much slack or how tight do the 4 corners need to be when you get started. What I have discovered is I adjust the guy lines to about 1/3 of the way. So, and then what I'll do is, or what that does is give me enough slack where I'm able to actually insert my trekking poles. So that's the next point I want to show you here with the trekking poles versus the stakes that you can actually buy from Hyperlite Mountain Gear in replace of the actual trekking poles. So what Hyperlite Mountain Gear does is they sell these carbon fiber tent poles that you can select off the website based on the tent that you have. So as you can see here, this is the Unbound 2-person tent carbon fiber poles. Now what they advertise with this tent is that the height of this thing is 48 inches or 122 centimeters. That's what they advertise as the height, right? So when I was, again, staking out the corners and trying to insert my poles, I started with these carbon fiber poles. And what I just want to highlight to you here is my trekking poles at 6'2", so that when I'm holding on to them, my arms are at a 90-degree angle. My trekking poles are set top and bottom at the 135 centimeter mark. I did not measure this with a tape measure, but I just want to point out that the carbon fiber poles stick up about 3 inches longer than my trekking poles, and they're advertised as being a 122 centimeter pole. Again, I've got my poles set at 135 centimeters at the top and the bottom. And, you know, they're saying that this is a 122 centimeter pole. I could not get these carbon fiber poles into the, the pocket at the top and actually get it to slip through the strap that is available here at the bottom. Okay, you can see that strap coming out right there. So what I love about the trekking pole way of doing it is, you know, the trekking poles have that tip at the bottom, that steel tip. And what I'm able to do then is once I insert the handle in first and I bring it down to the bottom, then I'm able to insert that steel tip through that strap, and that tip then goes into the ground, which just helps really lock in and give me an extra layer of just tautness with the bathtub between poles. So that's one of those initial things I do, is just make sure that I pull the second pole away from the first one in a way that really tightens the bathtub floor down. So that's what I've chosen to go with, is having my trekking pole again at 135 centimeters. I mean, it's one of the longer poles, and it's still not as long as this carbon fiber pole is that Hyperlite Mountain Gear provides. So that tells me that, I mean, I don't question Hyperlite Mountain Gear. They made this thing for a reason, but the tip is, you know, is just flat. So that means that there's nothing that's going to really stick down on the ground unless the ground is soft. But this thing is going to actually give you 3 more inches of headspace than what I've got already. When I sit up in there at 6'2", I've got an enormous amount of headroom left over. So once I get everything all set up, my third time doing it has been my best time, and now, meaning that it was, as you saw here, it was incredibly taut all the way around. The one thing that I'm still playing around with are the 4 corners of the bathtub that have loops for stakes, but do I really need to carry those extra stakes or not? But just enough to kind of create some more tautness on the bathtub floor, so that as we're moving around and doing stuff, I'm not kind of tugging on that. It's just a little extra security, if you will, and I don't mean the armed guard security, right? But a little bit of extra tautness in the tent that it can enable it to even better stand up in the elements and all that. Okay, so once I get it set up, the first thing you're going to notice about the Unbound 2-person tent is the vestibule areas on both sides are enormous. So I'm able to put all of my gear on the inside over here in the vestibule, and then still have all this area to get in and out of the tent on this side if I want to. That screen, however, unzips the whole side basically of the tent. That would allow me a whole lot of space to get in and out of my pack without having to go around the trekking pole. So really like that feature. So the other thing I really love about this tent compared to my Nemo is this space. What we've done now, so again, this is just kind of a reminder that when you're choosing your 2-person tent, those measurements matter as it pertains to your gear. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I've actually built a house around my living room furniture, so I can understand buying a tent around my sleep system potentially. So what we've got now as an option is, because I'm 6'2" and 210, I've got Zenbivi's ultralight sleep pad that is an extra wide and long. So I'm dealing with a 25-inch up here at the top head end, the upper half of the mattress, but then it tapers down at the bottom. We've moved my wife into a 72-inch. This is the regular size Nemo Tensor all-season sleep pad. We've moved her into the regular size one, which is still 72 inches long. She's 5'7", so has an enormous amount of length, but at a 20-inch width, it's we're going to play with that and give it a night or two here and there to see how she feels. She's more of a mummy sleeper, so we've got her in the kind of mummy bag, and she just sleeps on her back most of the night. So whereas me, I'm very active side sleeper, and that's why this mattress from Zenbivi was so highly recommended. You can see the 2 very different styles that those sleep pads present for us based on how we sleep. So what I wanted to emphasize with this tent, however, is that the measurements tell you that this is a 48-inch wide bathtub. A 48-inch wide bathtub then would tell me that 2 25-inch beds, 50 inches, would not fit. But I just want to show you, if I bring my sleep pad all the way to one side, okay, and again, she's in a 20-inch pad all the way to the other side. I don't know about y'all, but that's easily 5 inches of space that I've got left over in this bathtub. That's without staking out the corners of the bathtub. The only thing, so there's plenty of room here that if we wanted to move her into an extra wide mattress just to give her more space, more comfort, more pad, we could do that. But the other thing that's super cool about this, with being a 93-inch long bathtub, is you can see the space I've got over my head and foot box. Just an enormous amount of space here. So what I also love about it is the headroom that enables me to sit up straight, and my wife, and we have plenty of room to sit up straight, mess around in here with our clothes or our sleep system, our food, anything we might have to be messing around with inside the tent, especially when it's inclement weather and we can't really be out. There's a ton of headspace in this tent.
Our shepherds kept their watching, or silent flocks by night. Behold, throughout the heavens there shone
right, so the mail came today. Now that you've seen the Hyperlite Mountain Gear Unbound 2-person tent, it's time to compare it to the Mid-1 tent from Hyperlite Mountain Gear. So the difference here is a 2-person to a 1-person. Say hi to Blue. But the first thing I noticed with this is when I got this tent, as you saw in my review with the Nemo tent video, the Nemo tent packed down quite a bit smaller than this one did. Now, what I like to do when I pack my gear is the outside stuff pouch, both in my Osprey Ether 65 as well as my Hyperlite Mountain Gear Southwest 55. I always like to put the tent in the outside pouch, so when I get to camp, that's the first thing I pull out. Let's get the shelter built first and get everything inside, and then I can move on to cooking, right? That's just my routine. What I was not able to do is put this great big tent in that outside stuff pouch in addition to my rain gear, because I like to keep my rain gear in that outside pouch. Those are just a couple things that regularly grabbing. Any other layers I'm wearing usually can just hang over a strap of some kind on the pack pretty easily, but this had to go on the inside of my Hyperlite Mountain Gear pack as I was just due to its size. So you can see here the difference in size now with the Mid-1 first impressions straight out of the box. It's like maybe half the size. One person to 2-person, maybe that is an obvious indicator there, but that's the first thing that's super exciting for me. One trekking pole to set it up, and half the size. So I'm going to pull this thing out of the bag. Let's get this thing set up and see how it looks compared to the Unbound. So I talked about in the Unbound 2-person how I tried to get the carbon fiber tent poles that Hyperlite Mountain Gear sends. I returned those today, and I showed you the size issue I ran into with the trekking pole size versus the length of those poles. But the Mid-1 actually comes with an extender. Now, I've heard people talk about what they don't like about the Mid-1 is how long the trekking pole needs to be to set this thing up and pitch it correctly. So what I've ran into, my trekking poles is 6'2", set to 135 centimeters, worked perfect. So we're about to see here if that same trekking pole size will be what I need for the Mid-1. So here we go. All right, so it took me a second to figure out kind of where the bathtub was. Again, first impressions here. So we got one tie out there in the corner, one here in the back, one in the corner, and then our 2 vestibule ones. So it's been about a week since I got the Hyperlite Mountain Gear Mid-1. First impressions in setting it up with my trekking pole, which if you missed was 135 centimeters. So today I moved both ends of it up to the maximum length that I can extend it to at 140 centimeters. That did give me a little bit more pitch, which kind of dealt with the tautness of the angle of the tent, because it was pretty flimsy, kind of hit me in the head a little bit when I laid down in there, right? So now I've got it a little bit longer. It definitely a little bit tauter until I opened up the fly, but I've got my full sleep system in there. So I want to get in there now, see my foot and head space. And then what I've also got is some extra guy line from Hyperlite Mountain Gear that I may attach a few extra guy line points to help keep this thing taut even when the fly gets open. So I'm going to play around with a couple little things here, and here we go. On my sleep system, on my pillow, no, I sleep with a Zenbivy system, the sleep system, and that their pillow allows me to get a little bit more height in my pillow than maybe a lot of you that might just sleep with next to nothing, rolled up layer or something like that. But for me, at 6'2", on a high pillow. I've got, you know, maybe an inch or two above my head with the fly shut. So this thing's pretty taut. I mean, there's a little bit of play in it here. So this guy line right here, as well as the one right here at my feet, I'm gonna play around with guying those out and see if that doesn't give me a little more tautness, and just, even if it's just 1 or 2 inches of clearance in the foot and head, it'll give me just that much more space to keep my sleeping bag from getting wet with condensation. But you see my toe, right toe hits, left toe's got a ton of room. So we're gonna, again, just play around with a few things here and see how this works out. So the Unbound 2-person tent actually comes with this extra guy line that comes off of the peak here, right? So I attached it here, and then the way the Unbound works is it comes down, it's got a loop from the top, but then it's got the short end that comes out to snap into the rain fly. So I tried to replicate that here on the Mid-1, and at least so far, one thing it does do is just keep that trekking pole a little more taut. So if I come in here and take a look at it, it isn't moving at all. I mean, it's just, you know, a 1/4 inch wiggle is all you get. It doesn't do anything to help how loose the sides are when you open up both flies. So, you know, if I got an evening where I want to keep that open and I got a good view and I want to watch the sunset or sunrise or any of those kind of things, I've just got to anticipate here that the walls of the tent are going to be a little floppy in the wind. So I'm going to play around here with the side guy lines to see if that tightens it up a little bit to where if I was going to spend the night in that option, I could do that easily. And then I'll attach the guy lines to these guy out points here and see what that might do as well, whether or not I want to roll with a few extra stakes and guy lines or keep it as is. So if you were going to choose to sleep with both rain flies open, then the front 2 guy out points are the only ones that were able to tighten down just a little bit. The other 3 around the backside, I couldn't tighten any more than they already were. So what loosens up when you open up both rain flies seems to just be the front 2. And with this extra guy line that I've obviously put here on the trekking pole, that seems to be keeping everything pretty taut. Yeah, so attaching a new guy line to those guy out points here, hopefully you can kind of see how that pulls that out, right? And to get on this end, it pulls it out. That point is, you can almost see it through the tent, is right center above my pillow and head. And it definitely gives me a few extra inches of room for my head. And it also does the same thing over here on the foot box. So now my toes don't touch at all. My head isn't close to touching. And because it's more taut, the wind is, you know, not going to flap it as much. It might push it in a little bit, but, you know, it's going to come back out to this guy out point. So big improvement. Definitely going to keep those on the sides. I could certainly attach 2 more out here, and it would just taut up that side and give me a little bit more strength and resilience and maybe some higher windy conditions. But it's pretty taut the way it is right now, and that flapping is not so excessive that it's caving it in on me. It's super tight and taut right now. You can kind of see the stretch. So no real issue there. So for context, I'm rolling with Zenbivvy's ultralight sleep system. So you have the quilt on top, the mattress underneath is 25 inches wide up here at the shoulder area, tapers down, but it's 78 inches long for me, and at 6'2", it is perfect. And then yeah, got the quilt on top, and then I've also got this pillow system, which you can probably tell is pretty thick. So you got the inflatable insert on the bottom, and then the pillow top soft insert on the top inside that pillow case. So then it tucks inside the hood, actually clips inside the hood so it doesn't move around at all as I do. I'm an active sleeper. But what you can kind of see here is just how much room I've still got off of the end, so I'm not, you know, rubbing up against. And with that guy out point up there, I've got plenty of headroom. And then down at the foot box, if you can see there, plenty of room at the end of the pad. I mean, you're talking 96 inches in this bathtub for the tent. So 78 inches on my mattress and system here, plenty of room, right? It's almost 20 inches of room on either end. The thing to take note of, though, now again, I'm 6'2", so this works perfect for me. But the thing to take note of is if you used up all 96 inches of the bathtub floor with a sleep system, if you're excessively tall, you're going to have to deal with just the slope of the tent walls hitting your head and hitting your feet. So, you extra long folks may have to look at another tent or just guide this thing out a little bit differently or deal with it. So this is what I've got going on the inside. And then because this is 38 inches, I think is what we're looking at, if I remember right, on the width of the bathtub. You know, my 25-inch pad still gives me a good foot on the other side up underneath my sleep system. You can see here as well, I've got these bathtub pull-up points. There's one all the way in the corner, two that work down the side right there, and then another one in the corner. And I've tightened them all the way up. That just gives me a little bit more bathtub wall, but you can still see I've got plenty of screen showing for airflow around this thing. So really happy with how this came out, actually getting my sleep system in here, playing with the guy lines a little bit. Yeah, it's a couple extra stakes, but they're ultralight. But it's just gonna make this tent that much more solid and stable in windy conditions. So I can't wait to actually test it out in the mountains here before I get into my thru hike and see how this thing holds up real time. So more to follow.
Gather around this table, boy. You bring your shame, I'll lose my voice. Screaming at the gods about the bad we've done.